Hi, welcome back. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm Amy and this is Grace, and we're going to be baking again today. A few weeks ago, we asked for your suggestions of what you'd like to bake, and I really appreciated all of your ideas. A few people mentioned something to do with pie crust. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to make something fun with pie crust. We're going to make empanadas. And here we go. All right, these are going to be really fun and they're really versatile, and I think you're going to enjoy them. So empanada, the word comes from actually the Spanish word, and that means to wrap in bread. So we are going to wrap in pie crust, and you can wrap anything. They're super versatile. You can go sweet, you can go savory, whatever you like. All right? As always, the recipe for these are always going to be in the post that goes with this video, and that has a lot of information in it. And remember, whenever you bake, you always want to read the recipe all the way through twice before you begin. The recipe that you're going to look for is called chicken and apple empanadas. So we're going to get started. So we're getting ready to bake. So we have gotten out all of our ingredients. We've made sure our work area is clean. We've pulled our hair back. We've washed our hands. We've put on aprons, and we have read our ingredients and our recipe all the way through twice. So this is what we're going to be making. It's basically a pie crust, and it's very simple. We're going to be mixing our dry ingredients first. We're going to be working in the fat that we need for our pie crust, which in this case is going to be shortening and butter. And then we're slowly going to add water till we get a cohesive crust that comes together. There are 3 ways you can do this. You can use a food processor, which is by far the easiest. You just put your ingredients in and you're just going to, pulse it until it cuts it all up. You can use a pastry blender, which what we're going to use, or you can just use your hands to work through the dough. So whatever you have at home, you're going to be perfectly equipped. All right, we're going to start with our flour. What's the first item we put in? How much flour do we put in, Grace?
2/3.
Whoops.
Wait. Oh yeah, 3 1/4 cups.
3 1/4 cup. So, fluff, sprinkle, sweep. You ready? So I often say that we do this for a King Arthur flour recipe. And I say that because different recipes, different flour companies, different people who come up with a recipe, they may measure their flour differently. I've mentioned before that the best way to measure your ingredients, here you go, is by weighing it. So for King Arthur, our cup of flour, we want it to be about 4 1/4 ounces. Someone else, they may think of a cup of flour as 5 ounces. So for us, fluffing, sprinkling, and sweeping is going to help us by volume get as close to 4 1/4 ounces as we can. Beautiful. I think over the weeks you have perfected your fluffing, sprinkling, and sweeping technique. All right, while she's doing that, I'm gonna grab our other ingredients, which are just right now salt and sugar. So we're gonna do a tablespoon of sugar and a teaspoon of salt. And we're just gonna put them all here in our bowl. All right, and then I got the 1/4 cup out for you. All right, while she's doing that, I'm just gonna grab our butter and our shortening, which I've had in the refrigerator because I want them to be nice and cold. And I'm just gonna start to mix this up with our hands. When we're making things like pie crust or different kinds of pastry like this, we like our pastry to be flaky. The way you get flaky pastry is that in your dough that you're making, you're gonna be creating layers. A layer of fat, then a layer of flour, then a layer of fat, and a layer of flour. And you're gonna get those nice layers by the way you mix your fat in. All right, so that's how you make nice flaky crust. You want your, whatever fat it is you're using, so that be shortening or butter, to be nice and cold. It's gonna help it not blend in too much so that you get those nice layers. So when we're doing this, if you're gonna be using your hands, you wanna kind of keep your hands out of here as much as you can, touch it as little as possible, because the warmth of your hands is gonna actually melt the butter, all right? So cold hands, warm heart, good pie crust. So we have our dry ingredients in. For our fat, we have 6 tablespoons of vegetable shortening, which you drop into the bowl. Perfect. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take this out, all right, and put that all into the bowl. So remember, if you had a food processor, you would just zap it. We're going to use a pastry cutter, which is this kind of tool. It just has these little lines or like sort of cutting implements on it. And what you do is you just kind of press down and it cuts up the shortening into the bowl. I like to do these in 2 different steps. I'm going to do the shortening first. If you didn't have a pastry cutter, you could use a fork and just go along and press it in like that. If you did not want to use a fork, you could use your hands and work your shortening in that way. So you have lots of choices depending on what you have in your kitchen. All right, so there's our shortening. That is mixed in. Next, we're going to be doing 12 tablespoons of butter. I've already cut them up into small pieces just to give a head start. Oh, thank you. All right, we'll put that over there. So I think it's good in the beginning. Give those a little toss, kind of coat them in the butter. And then again, you could use your hands and kind of push these together. If you watch the video we did on scones, this is how we worked our butter in. If you don't want to do that, you can use a fork, or here we're going to use our pastry blender. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to press down and kind of give it a twist. Do you want to do some, Grace? Because I'm using my pastry blender, I picked kind of a large bowl so that I know that I'd be able to get into it easily and really get to all the flour. If my bowl was kind of small, I'd have a hard time. It's going to take us just a minute or 2 to work this in because our butter is nice and cold. So we'll be back in just a few minutes. Welcome back. All right, so you can see that our butter and shortening are mixed in pretty well. And when I clump my dough together, see how it kind of stays together a little bit? But you can still see pieces of butter, and that's perfect. Now, if I was gonna go straight on to make like a blueberry pie, I would really make sure that I've like pressed down and gotten some nice sheets of butter in my pie crust. Empanadas, they're still gonna be flaky, but I also want them to hold together. So it's okay if you mix it a little bit more. So we've got everything worked in. So now we have 2/3 to about 3/4 cup of ice water. So you can actually put ice cubes in your ice water to keep it cold, and you're gonna add it just bit by bit. And then we're gonna mix it together with a fork until it just comes together. So I'm just putting a little bit in. Oops, we're just sticking the mat underneath. There you go. And Grace is just going around mixing the butter, and she's making sure she's getting the flour and everything down from the edges. And it's starting to come together. Let's do just a little bit more. So I still have a lot of water left in my measuring cup. I think I put 2/3 in there. I didn't even go all the way for 3/4. If it's a really dry day, you might end up using more water. If you're in a humid place, you won't need as much. All right. So now, because again, I like to put my hands in everything, you can see how it's really starting to stick together. That's great. Let me take my dough scraper, and I'm just gonna go along. I'm just gonna kind of see if I can get everything to stay together, and that will tell me if I need any more water. All right, still just a little dry. I think I need just a little bit more. All right, Grace, give that a go. And again, we're just using a fork. And you can kind of mash it in a little bit if you want. We've been practicing these in our house because before doing it for this video, we had never made these before.
Well, I had them. You have made them before.
Well, I made them for practice. I haven't made them before that.
Really?
Yeah, and look at how good they're turning out. It's almost as if we had a theory that everyone can bake. All right, so I'm just gonna go around, and I'm just gonna push, and everything is coming together. All right, I don't know that we need to add any more, Grace. I think we're good. Yeah. So with my hands, I'm gonna put everything together. Okay, so this is one whole recipe. Our next step is to chill our dough. So you can make it into the form of a disc, wrap it in plastic. I like to actually divide it in half. So when I take it out, I can just roll half at a time, just because I don't have a lot of space on my counter and I can't fit a whole recipe on my counter. So I'm gonna take my dough, press it into 2 discs. They're pretty even. Can I let you wrap one up? I'm gonna put it flat down on the counter, put it in, and just wrap a plastic around it. And do the same with this one. All right, so this now needs to chill. It can chill for anywhere from an hour to overnight. So this is something that you can do ahead of time. You can make these the night before or in the morning, and then you have them that evening or the next day. So I'm just gonna put these in here. I'm gonna put my little top on it. That's ready to go into the fridge. But for our viewing ease, we already have some. So I just took this out of the refrigerator while we took our break. We're gonna roll this out. This is half of a recipe. We're gonna roll this out until it's 1/8 of an inch thick. So I have my rolling pins. There's lots of different style rolling pins. Whatever you have is fine. I put a little bit of flour down, put a little flour on top, and I'm just gonna roll it out. And generally when rolling, you wanna go from the inside out. And you can turn yourself, but you can also pick up and turn your dough if you want. So it gets nice and even. All right. That looks good. And we actually have our little ruler so we can see if we're an 1/8 of an inch thick. And I think we're good. Okay. The recipe suggests to use a cutter or a circle that's about 3 1/4 inches to cut out your dough, and it will give you about 25 to 30 empanadas. I don't have a 3 1/2 inch cutter. I have a glass bowl that's about 4 inches. And this gave us probably about maybe 20 empanadas, but I actually found that when we were going to shape them, it was easier when it was bigger, especially if you have small hands. So we're simply gonna take our bowl, put it down. You totally can cut it. Take a knife, and you're just gonna go around the edges. I'll give you some space. You're good. Let me know if you need me to help you at all, but I think you're doing great. And I say go ahead and make all your cuts before you take them apart. We'll do one more over there, and we'll do one over here. When we pick this up, we're gonna take this dough, we're gonna push it back together, put it in the refrigerator for just a minute or two, roll it back out again, and we're just gonna keep going until we've used most of our dough. When you are down to where you have just a little bit of dough and you don't have enough to make an empanada, what we like to do in our families, we like to roll it out a little bit, fill it with some brown sugar and cinnamon, roll it up, and make a little mini pie crust cinnamon roll. My brother makes a lot of pies, and he always brings one of those for his nieces and nephews. Okay, so we're gonna pick this up. And there are 4 circles. So I would take this back, I'd probably put it back in the plastic, and I would just stick it in the refrigerator just for another few minutes or so. But just to keep things easy for us, I have some already rolled out. Where are we gonna put these? We're gonna put them, let's do this. All right, so I've already rolled these out. I have them layered between parchment paper. So these were rolled out, laid down, and then ideally you wanna stick them back in the refrigerator for about 15, 20 minutes or so. You can skip that step if you don't wanna do that, so don't worry about that. So fillings, you really can fill this with anything you want. And for parents out there who are providing 3 meals a day for all of these days, I'm running out of dinner ideas. I ran out of dinner ideas probably 6 years ago, but
I don't like anything.
you do like some things, but so I went into my refrigerator to see what I had for leftovers. The recipe that we use today is an apple and chicken empanada, and that has a really delicious filling that you can try. If you look online, you can find all kinds of great fillings that are probably a little bit more authentic. But here's what we did. We cut up some apples, and I mixed this with brown sugar, a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of allspice, just until it looked right for me. And then this is leftover dinner last night. So we had some chicken and some broccoli, so I cut it up. I added some cumin and coriander, and then some shredded cheese. And so that's what we're gonna use to fill our empanadas. So filling, okay, we have been practicing this. You're gonna take an egg wash, which is a little bit of an egg, a little bit of flour, and you're just gonna put a little bit around half of the edge. And the secret is not too much. You're gonna take your filling, I think we realized yesterday, Grace.
Just like a spoonful.
Just a spoonful, less than you think. You're gonna put your filling in the middle, like that. All right, and you're gonna fold it up. Sealing it together, as always, you like to have options.
There's a lot of filling.
Oh, did I put too much?
Maybe.
Might have put too much. So when you seal it together, you have some choices. You can take a fork and you can just crimp it like that. And this is really, that wash is going to keep it closed. So that's one way you can do it. And we'll put that on our pan. Option 2 is a little bit more like a traditional pie. We're going to pinch it with our fingers. So I think it's good. See how little egg wash she puts on there? You don't want so much that it kind of squishes and runs out because you're not making scrambled eggs.
That might be too much again, but...
You think it's too much again?
Yes.
All right. I will say Grace is better at this than I am. Okay, so try that.
I didn't do the pie style last time.
Okay.
You did.
I will do the pie style if you want to get our next one ready. So for pie style, you're going to pinch. So I'm going to take my fingers, if I can get in a good place. I'm going to put my finger down, I'm going to pinch around it, put my finger down, pinch around it, pinch around it. Just like that. So that's one way you can do it. And if you're using different fillings, one way you can tell them apart on the baking sheet is that you use a different style for each one. However, if you see really amazing videos people who are really good at making empanadas, they do this kind of rolling technique. And so we were trying that. And we're gonna show you. And again, Grace is better at this than I am. And we think it's because she does more hair overall. Her hands are more limber. So we're gonna take some filling, and they do this interesting thing. You kind of wanna pinch it as closed, but then they do this rolling technique. So she's taking it, and she's kind of folding it and rolling it along the sides.
I'm not very good at this.
I think you're better. I think you're really good at it. This is easier done holding in your hand than laying flat the way we did the others.
The juice from the apples is like falling.
Yeah, our apples got a little juicy, so. All right, I'll try one. So I take it and I fold it. I just kind of fold it and roll it.
That looks better than like all of last night's.
It takes practice, and it doesn't have to look perfect. It's gonna taste good. All right, so we're gonna line these up here. Let me do a chicken one just so we can see what that looks like. So another thing you can do, if you have parchment paper, you can write on your parchment paper with a Sharpie, apple, chicken, so you can tell them apart. At this point, I don't have to bake them. I could put them in the freezer until they're frozen. It might take like an hour and a half or so. And I can put them in a Ziploc bag, and then I can take them out when I need them. I'll put them on a tray. The same temperature I'm gonna bake them at, 375 degrees, but rather than 15 to 20 minutes, it just might take 5 minutes extra. All right, so we'll do this one with chicken and broccoli. So really, like it really can be whatever you have in your refrigerator. If you have like ham, leftover hamburgers, you could cut those up and put them in. I'm gonna try the roll. Just takes practice and practice. Okay. Thank you. And I know that those of you who are watching, you guys are gonna have family members that are much better at this than we are. But when you're learning something new, you've gotta practice and give it a try.
looks good.
Okay, I think it looks good at the end.
That looks good at the end.
It's a mess there, but it looks good at the end. All right, so we're gonna lay these out. We're gonna give them a light brushing of egg wash, and then we're gonna stick them in the oven. They're gonna bake at 375 degrees for 15 to 20 minutes until they have a nice golden brown look to them. Then we're gonna take them out and you're gonna eat them. If you don't eat all of them, because you're making about 30 of them, once they're cooled off, you can also take your leftovers and you can freeze those. And then they heat up beautifully, either in the microwave or popping them back in the oven. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna finish some up, we're gonna stick them in the oven and then take them out so you can see what they look like. So we'll see you in just a bit. Hi, we're back. So our empanadas just came out of the oven. The whole house smells good. And we were just looking and I think that our crimping actually looks pretty good. A little room for practice, but I'm happy with it. So these are going to be our dinner tonight. These are about to go into the freezer. So in addition to Grace, I have a teenager, and so these will be ready for her to take out of the freezer and bake as she needs them, as she wants them, because for a snack in the afternoon or whatever. So just a few things to remember. Always read your recipe twice. There is tons of information in there. These are really fun to do as a family. You could do like a family fun night where everyone comes up with their own fillings and they fill them all together. You could do a taste test. They're ready when you need them. We cut ours a little bit bigger than what's recommended in the recipe. We found that was a little bit easier starting out. When you make your dough, you can use a food processor, you can use a pastry blender, or you can use your hands, and it all works. So we now need to go and clean our kitchen because I've got tons of dishes in my sink, but I hope that you enjoyed this and I hope that you give it a try and take pictures, share them with us because I'd love to see how it turns out. But other than that, we'll see you again soon. Happy baking.